Welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to tell you about the movie, The Maze Runner. Watch out for spoilers. In an elevator going up, a guy named Thomas wakes up. The elevator stops, the door opens. A lot of people are looking at him. Thomas runs away not understanding what is happening, but he falls. He sees that there is a huge wall around the place. Thomas is locked in a pit. A man named Albie talks to him and asks if he remembers anything from the past. Albie says that everyone who came here remembered nothing but their name. Albie talks about the settlement. Every month the elevator sends food and one newcomer. A guy named Newt also meets Thomas. He thought Thomas might even become a runner before he falls. They go up to the tower, where they look at the wall. Thomas wonders what's in that passageway. Albie says they have rules. You have to work, help others, and never go beyond the wall. A guy named Chuck says he had a much harder time during his climb up here. Suddenly, Thomas walks off toward the exit, wondering what's out there. They see two men return. Chuck tells them they are runners and they know more about the maze. Thomas is surprised that it is a labyrinth. He is curious to know what is there, but Chuck says it is dangerous. Suddenly, a guy named Gully pushes him away. Thomas doesn't understand why they won't tell him what's there, and suddenly the door to the maze closes. At night, the settlers light a fire and have fun. Newt gives Thomas a taste of the drink. Newt says that the labyrinth is a dangerous place. He points to the runners. Every morning they run into the maze and have been trying to find a way out for 3 years. Newt says it's hard to find the way out because the maze changes every night. It's very important to be fast, because if you don't make it back in time before the gate closes, you'll die there. The labyrinth is inhabited by monsters. Newt talks about the local people and their jobs. Thomas says he wants to be a runner. People gather around to watch Thomas and Gully fight. Gully teases him. In the course of the fight, Thomas realizes he has remembered his name and says his name is Thomas. Everyone is happy. Suddenly they hear the screams of a monster. They call these monsters the Grievers. Thomas is awakened by Albie. He tells them that many have died to find order here. Albie says that Thomas is not like the others and gives him a knife. The names of everyone who has been here are written on the wall and some of them are crossed out. Thomas continues to ponder how to get out, but Newt says they have tried everything. The only way out is through the maze. Thomas goes into the woods to gather fertilizer and finds the remains of a man. He sees a guy named Ben, who attacks Thomas. Thomas manages to escape. The settlers manage to rescue Thomas. Ben gets his shirt pulled up and sees an infestation. He is stung by a monster. Albie tells them it is an infection from the bite and it will only get worse. Thomas recounts Ben's words. The settlers prepare to send Ben over the wall. Thomas watches as they push Ben out into the maze. At night, they cross out his name. Thomas sees the memories in his sleep and wakes up. Thomas doesn't understand why Albie went into the maze, since he is not a runner, but he wants to find Ben's body. Newt says that Albie was the first to enter the maze. He spent a month here alone and he realized that the main thing is to stick together. Thomas worries that they won't come back because there isn't much time. The settlers are waiting for the runners at the entrance. The doors begin to close, but then they see them. The door is almost closed. Thomas runs into the maze, but the doors have already closed. Minho, the main runner, calls Thomas crazy because now they are going to die. Minho says that Albie was stung by a monster. Thomas says they can't leave Albie's body, and with the body they walk through the maze. They hear the monster. Minho says there is nowhere to go and they are already dead. Thomas has an idea how to save the body. They hang it on the wall. Minho sees the monster and runs away. Thomas hides under the foliage. The monster doesn't notice him. Thomas ties the vines and hides. Liquid drips on Thomas. It's the monster who starts chasing him. Thomas hits a dead end, but manages to climb up. Thomas grabs the vines. The creature almost grabs him, but gets stuck in the vines. Minho shows up and they run away. Thomas stops. The monster runs after him. At the last moment he gets out and the monster is squeezed by a wall. The gate opens, and the settlers see Thomas and Minho. There is a meeting. Gully thinks Thomas should be punished for breaking the rule. Minho says that Thomas is left to defend Albie and he should become a runner. Suddenly they hear the elevator going up, but the month hasn't passed yet. Inside, they only find a girl, with a note in her hand saying that she is the last person to be sent here. The girl wakes up and says the name Thomas. Thomas doesn't recognize her, though she knows him. They are afraid that the elevator may not come back. Thomas wants to go back to the maze to examine the monster's body. The other runners don't want to go back to the maze. Minho says to wait for him in the woods. Minho leads a group of guys to head for the maze. They come running to the crushed body. The group struggles to pull out a leg. They find a strange gauge and return. The symbols on the thing are the same as on the supplies from the elevator. Gully doesn't like that Thomas is breaking the rules that allowed them to live peacefully. Newt, as punishment, leaves Thomas in the pit for one night without food, and he is now officially a runner, which Gully doesn't like. Minho leads Thomas to the secret place of the runners and shows him a map of the labyrinth. The runners have already explored the entire maze and never found a way out. Now, thanks to Thomas, they have hope of finding a way out. A year ago they found numbers. These are the numbered sections of the labyrinth. From the 7th section came out the same monster. They are told that a girl is awake. She sits on the tower and fights off everyone. Thomas says it's him, and she stops throwing rocks. He goes up to her. He asks where she is and why she doesn't remember anything. She tells him her name right away. Her name is Teresa. She doesn't know where from. She knows Thomas. Teresa remembers only fragments of memories. Thomas has these memories as well. He saw her in a dream. Teresa gives the vials of liquid that were in her pocket. They decide that this liquid can help Albie heal. Albie grabs Thomas and they manage to administer the medicine. Gully comes in and takes him to the pit. Gully doesn't like Thomas because trouble started after he came in. Chuck comes in and gives Thomas food. Chuck shows the figurine he made for his parents. He doesn't remember them, but he is sure he has them. Chuck gives the figurine to Thomas, if Thomas finds a way out, perhaps giving the figurine back to his parents. Thomas gives the figurine back. Chuck has to give the figurine to his parents himself and they get out together. Minho and Thomas head to the maze. They head to Section 7 of the maze. Minho says that Section 7 must be closed. There are thin plates all around. A sensor from the monster begins to make a sound. It points the way. They come to a strange room with a door. Suddenly the door opens. Ahead of them is a tunnel. A laser scans them and the door closes. The plates begin to close. At the last moment they manage to get out, but then other plates rise up from the ground. They make their way between the plates and get out. They tell the settlers about the exit. Gully and Thomas begin to argue. Teresa says that Albie is awake. Albie says he remembers everything and remembers Thomas. They will not be allowed to get out. Night falls, but the gates still do not close. The gates in other parts also open. Monsters run out of the maze. Panic ensues. They hide, but one guy gets grabbed and they run away. Teresa throws a can of fire at the creature and they run away again. The monster chases them. The group hides in a building. The creature breaks through the roof and grabs Chuck. Albie chops a tentacle and Chuck is rescued, but the monster drags Albie away. Gully comes in and beats Thomas. He blames it all on him. Thomas takes the monster's syringe and stabs himself. Thomas sees memories and the words of a woman. Thomas wakes up and sees Teresa. Now Gully is in charge and blames everything on Thomas. Thomas tells him that this place is not a prison, but a test. Thomas was the one who sent them to the maze as well as Teresa. Newt says it doesn't matter anymore. What matters now is who they have become, and Thomas must find a way out. They are brought to the exit to be exorcised. Many think it is wrong to expel Thomas. Gully says this place is their home. Gully is not going to just banish them. He wants to feed them to the monsters. Thomas attacks. Everyone who supports Thomas retreats to the exit. Thomas says he'd rather take his chances and find a way out, since this place isn't their home. Some of the settlers decide to join Thomas. The group heads toward Section 7. They see a monster ahead. The group attacks the creature. They try to push it off the bridge. Chuck drops the device and manages to catch it, but another monster appears. The group pushes one out, but two more appear. The doors open, but there's a code on it. Minho says the order of the sections of the maze. The monsters become numerous. The door opens and they enter a corridor. A light comes on. The group comes to the exit. Inside, they see a mess and dead people. They don't understand what happened here. They were really being watched the whole time. Thomas activates the computer. A video recording starts up. A woman introduces herself as the general secretary of the company that is doing the Labyrinth project. She says if they are watching this video, it means the test is successful. She knows they're confused, but says everything has a reason. The woman says the sun has burned the planet. The whole world has fallen into chaos. A deadly virus has appeared that affects the brain. A new generation of humans have been able to resist the virus, so it was necessary to experiment with young men to try to get a vaccine. She says their trial is just beginning and then shoots herself in the head. Thomas sees the body of this very woman. Suddenly the door opens and suddenly Gully appears with a gun. Gally is stung by the monster. He says they can't get away and points his gun and prepares to shoot, but Minho manages to throw a spear. Gully's shot hits Chuck. Chuck gives Thomas the figure. He thanks Thomas and dies. Men with guns enter the room and take the group away. Outside there is scorched earth. The guys are put in a helicopter and told they are safe now. In the helicopter, they see a maze. Then we see the very woman who killed herself. It's time to start the second phase of the challenge. This concludes the first film of the trilogy, The Maze Runner. Thanks for watching and good luck, friends.